Imagine you're watching someone you love, about to walk right into a trap.
Right.
And I mean, not a physical trap, obviously, but a mistake. Like they're about to sign a terrible lease or maybe take a class they are totally unprepared for or miss a crucial
Yeah,
deadline.
you see the train wreck happening in slow motion.
Exactly. And your primal instinct, especially if you're a parent, is to just sprint over, throw your arm out, and stop them. You want to clear the obstacle, remove the pain, and just handle it for them.
Because it feels like the ultimate act of caring. Right.
Yes, exactly. But today, we're going to look at why that exact instinct might actually be the very thing setting young adults up for, well, massive failure.
It's a really massive, super counterintuitive paradox. We're taking a deep dive into a huge stack of recent sociological and psychological research today to, look under the hood of helicopter parenting.
And we've got some heavy hitters guiding us today. We're pulling from foundational work by Schiffrin from 2014 on well-being, recent 2024 data from Miller and colleagues on academic outcomes.
And we also have Shin and Adam's 2023 work on psychological needs, plus some really eye-opening stuff from Vigadal and Brunick on anxiety.
Oh, right, and Jiao and Segrin from 2023 on communication, which, spoiler alert, kind of blows up everything we thought we knew about just talking it out.
It really does, because our mission today isn't just looking at the surface-level symptoms, like, why a college student might not know how to do their own laundry. We want to know why well-intentioned love actually transforms into this psychological roadblock.
Yeah, and as I was going through this stack of sources for our deep dive today, the thing that really struck me most wasn't even the behavior of the kids. It was the root motivation of the parents.
Yeah, that's where the Miller study from 2024 is so illuminating.
Right, because you'd assume a controlling parent is just driven by ego or like narcissism, but the literature paints a totally different picture.
It absolutely does. The recent data makes it abundantly clear that helicopter parenting is almost never malicious. It usually involves providing a massive amount of assistance in areas where a young adult is actually perfectly capable of resolving the issue independently.
So they're proactively removing problems before they even materialize.
Exactly. But this behavior is fundamentally driven by deep love, profound worry, or just a really desperate desire to prevent the child from repeating the parent's own past mistakes.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
The intention is pure. A parent looks at their child and thinks, I suffered through a ruined credit score in my 20s, or, I had a miserable time navigating a conflict with a college roommate, and I do not want you to feel that pain.
Right, the instinct to protect.
So they step in, they pay the bill, or they send that angry email to the housing department. If the goal is a pain-free life for the child, why is it a problem to just steer them around the potholes?
Well, because a pain-free life is essentially a developmental illusion.
An illusion. How so?
There was a massive systematic review published in 2022 by Vigdal and Brunick, and they looked at exactly this dynamic. They found that the goal of a totally pain-free existence is fundamentally counterproductive.
Because struggle is actually necessary.
Yes. Struggle is not a bug in human development. It is a necessary feature. When parents constantly clear the path, they aren't just removing pain, they are actively robbing the young adult of the precise life experiences required to build resilience.
Wow. Robbing them.
Yeah, because resilience isn't a genetic trait you're just born with. It's a mechanism that only develops when it encounters friction.
It's like using a cheat code to skip all the hard levels in a video game.
That's a great way to put it.
Like you enter the code and you get to the end of the game quickly and totally painlessly, but when you finally cross the threshold and have to face the final boss, you're annihilated. You have absolutely no idea how to play the game.
Right, because you don't know the controls, you don't have the timing down.
And you haven't leveled up your character because you skipped the actual grinding required to learn those skills.
Exactly. And when you skip that grinding in real life, you arrive at the threshold of adulthood, chronologically mature, but psychologically fragile. The parents have removed the resistance, so the internal coping mechanisms just never had a reason to develop.
But if skipping those hard video game levels means you never learn the mechanics, how exactly does this lack of practice stunt a young adult's brain?
That's where we have to look at the psychological architecture.
Because we aren't just talking about a kid being a little spoiled or sheltered here. The sources suggest this fundamentally starves the mind of what it needs to function, right?
Yes. And to understand the mechanics of that starvation, we have to look at something called self-determination theory. A 2023 analysis by Shin and Adam explored overparenting through this specific lens.
Okay, break that down for us. What does that theory argue?
So it argues that for optimal, healthy human development, we all have three non-negotiable basic psychological needs. Think of them like psychological macronutrients.
I love that. Macronutrients for the brain. What are they?
You have autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Okay, relatedness seems fairly obvious. Feeling connected to other people, feeling loved.
Right, exactly.
But how do the sources define autonomy and competence in this specific context?
Autonomy is the internal feeling of being the author of your own life. It's the sense that, your choices are your own and you're in control of your direction.
And competence.
Competence is slightly different. It is the deep-seated belief that you are capable and effective in interacting with the world. It's the core belief that you can actually execute the tasks in front of you.
So how does the helicopter parent disrupt those two needs?
Well, helicopter parenting directly thwarts autonomy because the parent is the one at the steering wheel making the decisions and directing the path.
Right, taking away the choice.
Exactly. But the secondary damage, the starving of competence, is where the real psychological crisis begins.
Now, I have to push back here just to make sure we're grounding this in reality for the listener.
So what's on your mind?
Does stepping in to help a college student schedule a dentist appointment or like dropping off the laptop they forgot at home really send the psychological message that they're completely incompetent?
That's a very fair question.
Because to a lot of people, that just sounds like doing someone a solid when they're stressed out with midterms.
What's fascinating here is that if it happens once, absolutely not. Doing someone a favor is just doing a favor.
Right.
But the research points to the cumulative effect of a lifetime of these interventions. When a parent is constantly the one stepping in to handle the dentist appointments, the difficult emails to professors, the disputes with the auto mechanic.
Oh, I see. It's the pattern.
Yes. The implicit message being broadcasted day after day, year after year is, you cannot do this on your own. You are not capable of handling the friction of your own life.
Wow. And it's probably never stated maliciously.
Almost never. But the young adult's brain translates that constant rescuing into a deep-seated belief of inadequacy. That constant frustration of basic psychological needs is the primary engine that derails a student's adjustment to adulthood.
You cannot do this on your own. I mean, that is a brutal, invisible weight for a young adult to carry around.
It really is.
And if the underlying subconscious belief is, I am not capable, we really need to look at how that plays out in the one arena that helicopter parents are usually trying to optimize the most, which is academics.
Oh, the irony here is so thick.
Because the whole point of hovering usually is to guarantee the kid gets straight A's, gets into a prestigious college, and lands a high-paying job.
Yeah, and that irony is arguably the most fascinating part of the 2024 Miller data. This intense overparenting heavily backfires academically.
It backfires. How?
Students who experience helicopter parenting actually demonstrate significantly lower academic self-efficacy.
Let's translate that term for the listener. Academic self-efficacy. What does that actually look like in a real student?
Think of it as a student's trust in their own internal engine. It's their confidence in their own ability to regulate their motivation, organize their behavior, and navigate their environment to actually achieve a goal.
So because they've been overparented, they haven't been allowed to build their own competence.
Exactly. They do not trust their own engine. They just don't believe they can succeed on their own merits.
Which introduces a huge problem with how they find motivation in the first place. The sources draw a hard line between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation, right?
Yes, a very clear line.
And intrinsic is the gold standard. You want to learn because you're genuinely curious, or you find personal satisfaction in mastering a subject. Whereas extrinsic is doing it for an outside reward, chasing the grade, performing for parental applause, or desperately trying to avoid punishment.
And helicopter parenting inherently relies on and fosters extrinsic motivation. The parent literally becomes the external engine.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like hiring a personal trainer who literally lifts the weights for you.
I love that analogy, yes.
Yep. You get the applause for showing up to the gym, your trainer wipes the sweat off your brow, and you get to post a picture of the gym on social media. But your actual muscles are atrophying.
because you aren't doing the work.
Exactly. And the research shows this specific muscle atrophy leads to massive rates of academic procrastination, which makes total sense.
It makes complete sense.
Of course you procrastinate. You literally do not have the executive function muscle to lift the heavy weight when the trainer isn't standing right next to you yelling at you to do it.
The physiological equivalent of muscle atrophy is the absolute perfect way to understand this. When the parent is doing the heavy lifting, managing the calendar, outlining the essay, tracking the deadlines, the student's internal drive vanishes.
And Miller's research details this, right?
Yes, it details how this reliance on external forces cascades into an inability to set goals or monitor their own performance. Because why would a young adult learn the complex cognitive skill of goal setting if someone else has always mapped out their entire trajectory?
Wow. So when they're finally left to their own devices, faced with a 20-page term paper, and no one standing over their shoulder demanding a progress report.
They freeze. They
Yeah.
procrastinate because they completely lack the internal psychological architecture required to initiate and sustain difficult, self-directed work.
But wait, I can hear a skeptical parent right now saying, sure, maybe their intrinsic motivation is low, but my kid got straight A's and got into law school because I stayed on top of them. The extrinsic motivation worked.
Right, the results argument.
Yeah. How does the research address that?
It addresses it by looking at the timeline. Yes, external control can force short-term compliance. You can bully or drag a student across a high school graduation stage.
But long term.
Long-term, the research shows that once the complexity of the environment exceeds the parent's ability to control it, which is usually in college or the early career, the house of cards collapses because you simply cannot externally manage a 25-year-old's entire professional and social life.
Which brings us to the darkest part of this deep dive. A bad GPA or a delayed term paper is one thing.
Yeah, it gets much more serious.
But when you take that psychological muscle atrophy, that complete lack of internal architecture, and you force it to collide with real-world, unpredictable adult stressors, the consequences expand far beyond the classroom.
They really do. The sources indicate this dynamic is a primary trigger for a widespread mental health crisis.
Let's talk about the Vigil and Brunick review.
So they looked at this on a macro scale, synthesizing data from across the field. And they found a remarkably strong, consistent link between overparenting and significant symptoms of anxiety and depression in young adults.
And what's the mechanism driving that? Is it tied back to the competence thing?
Directly tied to the starvation of competence we just discussed. Because parents intervene before a child has the chance to struggle, the child never develops independent emotional regulation.
Give us a concrete visualization of that emotional regulation gap. Let's say a young adult hasn't learned to self-soothe or problem-solve because mom and dad always put out the fires.
Okay, like what kind of fire?
Like maybe bringing the forgotten homework to school or even calling the high school soccer coach to complain about playing time. How does that anxiety actually manifest when they finally face a baseline adult stressor? Something totally mundane, like getting a flat tire on the highway or dealing with a highly critical boss.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the internal monologue and the neurobiology of getting a flat tire.
Okay, getting a flat tire.
For an adult with a healthy, developed psychological toolkit, a flat tire triggers a brief spike in cortisol. You feel a surge of frustration, maybe mild panic,
Sure, it's annoying.
but almost immediately, your brain's executive function kicks in as a brake pedal. You access your coping strategies, you assess your competence, you remember you've solved unexpected problems before.
Right, you realize you can change the tire, or you can call road service.
Exactly. You map out a solution, the cortisol drops, and you handle it.
Like you said, it's an annoyance, not a tragedy.
Right. But for the young adult who has been heavily overparented, they don't just lack the mechanical knowledge of how to use a jack, they completely lack the internal brake pedal for that cortisol spike.
Because they've never had to use it.
Exactly. They have never ridden a wave of panic and survived it on their own, so their brain doesn't actually know the panic will subside. The flat tire isn't perceived as an annoyance. It is processed as an existential crisis.
Oh, wow. And the critical boss.
A critical boss isn't viewed as a professional hurdle to navigate. It is internalized as a crushing blow to their already fragile, unvalidated sense of self. They are left incredibly vulnerable, just easily overwhelmed by the normal, everyday friction of adult life.
Knowing this deep vulnerability exists and knowing how incredibly pervasive this parenting style is right now, we have to talk about solutions.
We definitely do.
If a family is listening to this and realizes, oh no, we are caught in this cycle, how do they fix it? Can they just sit down and talk it out?
Like a family meeting.
Yeah. Have a nice, transparent family meeting on a Sunday and say, okay, we've read the research and we're going to be independent now. Does
Yeah.
that work?
You would really hope so, but a really fascinating 2023 study by Zhao and Segrin reveals that talking is largely a myth in this scenario.
A myth.
Yeah. They found that open family communication does not buffer the mental health damage of overparenting. Even if the family talks about everything, and even if the child naturally possesses an autonomous personality, it simply isn't enough to protect them from the anxiety and depression caused by controlling behavior.
Wait, why wouldn't open communication work? If a parent is explicitly explaining why they are stepping in, shouldn't that soften the blow to the kid's autonomy?
Because words do not rewire the brain's competence centers. Only experience does.
Wow.
You cannot talk someone into feeling capable. The implicit message of the action, meaning I am doing this because you can't, will always overpower the explicit message of the words I'm doing this because I love you.
So the action speaks louder than the explanation.
The damage happens, regardless of how nicely you frame the intervention.
So a good heart-to-heart conversation just isn't enough. You actually have to change the mechanics of the relationship.
Exactly.
The sources provide 3 actionable behavioral takeaways for fixing this dynamic. Let's debate how these actually look in practice. Starting with the hardest one, let them struggle.
Yeah, that's the toughest pill to swallow.
Are we literally talking about just gritting your teeth and watching the metaphorical car crash happen? Do you let them fail to fill out their FAFSA and just miss out on college entirely?
This raises an important question, and it really requires nuance. The literature refers to manageable challenges.
Manageable challenges.
You don't let them walk into literal traffic, and you don't let them make a mistake that will ruin their life permanently if they lack the cognitive development to understand the risk. But yes, you have to let them face the natural consequences of failure in everyday arenas. If they forget to submit the housing application, they might have to live in a less desirable norm. That struggle is the non-negotiable prerequisite for resilience.
Which bleeds right into the second takeaway shift to supportive parenting. The sources contrast a doing-for approach with a standing-by approach.
Think of it as moving from the driver's seat to the passenger seat.
Okay, I like that image.
You don't abandon them on the side of the road. You still offer immense warmth, empathy, and responsiveness. If they're stressed about a conflict with a professor, you listen. You validate their stress.
But you don't fix it.
Right. You actively keep your hands off the steering wheel. You ask them, what do you think your options are? Rather than saying, here's the email I drafted for you to send.
And the third takeaway is to actively validate competence. Rather than fixing the problem, explicitly state your confidence in their ability to solve it themselves. So instead of saying, send me the mechanics bill, I'll pay it, you say, I know money is tight, but I trust you can figure out a budget to handle this, and I'm here to bounce ideas off of if you want to brainstorm.
Exactly. You are fundamentally changing the implicit message from you can't to you absolutely can.
You are handing the video game controller back to them.
Yes. You are forcing them to lift their own weights, and in doing so, you are allowing them to build the psychological architecture they need to actually survive.
This has been such an illuminating journey through the research. We started by looking at the pure, loving intentions of parents who just want to protect the people they care about most.
Which is completely natural.
Right. But by looking at the mechanics of self-determination theory, we've seen how that protection accidentally becomes a prison. When you systematically rob a young adult of autonomy, competence, and the absolute right to struggle, you stunt their growth.
You really do.
You replace their intrinsic drive with a fragile reliance on external applause, and you leave them entirely unequipped to emotionally regulate when real life inevitably hits them. Love is a powerful force, but when it is expressed through control, it manufactures vulnerability instead of strength.
It really does. And, as we synthesize all these findings, I want to leave you with one final broader question to consider.
All right, lay it on us.
If helicopter parenting starves a young adult's competence, creating individuals who are driven only by extrinsic praise and absolutely paralyzed by normal, everyday stress, what happens when this entire demographic fully ages into the system?
Wow.
What happens when they enter the workforce en masse, become managers, become policymakers, or start raising their own children? Are we just stunting individual growth? Or are we fundamentally altering the fabric of societal resilience?
That is a staggering question to chew on. Are we building a society that literally does not know how to play the game when the cheat codes get turned off? It's something you definitely need to think about the next time you feel the overwhelming urge to swoop in and save the day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love taking these complex stacks of research and finding the aha moments with you. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will catch you on the next one.